Hey, welcome back to the Daily Devo. My name is Matthew Carpenter. We are continuing the Jonah series, and we are almost done. Almost done. We got 3 verses left, and I've got 2 of them. And we're at the part where Jonah has given his message. All of Nineveh repents, and he's up on he's up east of the city, and God had sent some shade to help him out, and then he sent a worm to destroy this plant, and Jonah is miserable because we're going to pick up right here. It says that it came about in chapter 4, verse 8 and 9. And it came about when the sun came up that God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head so that he became faint and begged with all his soul to die, saying, "Death is better to me than life." Then God said to Jonah, "Do you have a good reason to be angry about the plant?" And he said, "I have good reason to be angry, even to death." So here we are. We have Jonah sitting up on this hill, and he wants to die. And the heat, God sent some heat for whatever it was. He has some shade, and this heat is hurting him. And he wants to die. With all his soul, he wants to die. What's unique about this particular moment is that Jonah did not move. He was sitting down. And so one of the first things that we might see in this particular part is I bet he could have got up and got a cup of water and shade in the city that had just turned their whole heart back to God. But he was sitting. So maybe one of our first lessons is self-pity is an anchor of the worst kind, anchoring us to the bottomless pit of shame and fear, so that we don't get up and change. And here's a second question that I might have is, what makes us so angry that we would not want to forgive a person or persons? You know, we might judge Jonah, but there's something in here that makes him so angry that God would forgive these people. And every single one of us has a tie of what we think would be too much for God to forgive. Is it murder, genocide, rape, hate speech, racism? What is it? What is it that if it happened to you or your family, that you would have a hard time saying that God would forgive them and you could turn your heart? It's easy to judge Jonah, and we don't know what has happened to Jonah, but I can imagine that an anger of that kind, that it's very possible that there might have been some things that happened to Jonah's family. Nothing said like that, but I can imagine that in a place like that, it would be very hard to move and see, God, I know that you forgive and that you're kind, but I don't necessarily want you to forgive those people. So here we find him, and he begs to die. He says, "I'd rather die than see you forgive them." And God said to Jonah, you have a good reason to be angry about this plant. And Jonah's like, "You betcha. I have every reason, enough to even die." So maybe another question is what is our greatest fear when we forgive or when we see forgiveness? Maybe it's that whoever it is will not pay for what they've done, or even that they will continue to hurt others. It is desperately hard for us to imagine how God can hold perfect justice and perfect grace in his hands, and to not just believe in God, but to believe God that his plan is good, that in his perfect plan, his justice and mercy and grace can coexist together. And the story plays out in this way, where we'll get to see it in another day, or in the next Daily Devo, about how God challenges Jonah about where is his heart at. And I wanted to leave you guys with something as we are wrapping up this Jonah series. There's a book that was written about a man actually in Conway, and it was a book written that a man was murdered from racism, and his uncle wrote it. And his uncle had searched for justice for years and years and years, and he couldn't find it. And he would get to these trials, and find these people that had been responsible, and it just would not come to fruition like they were wanting to be able to see justice. And they tried and they tried. And here's something that this man said near the end of this book. This book's called Markham Street by Ronnie Williams. He said, "Then God spoke to me deep in my spirit, and he said, 'Ronnie, your perception of justice may never come. This trial was not for you, it was for them. It was intended to give those individuals, including those who willingly participated in the cover-up, an opportunity to acknowledge their wrongdoing. And gradually I felt God steady me as he broadened my perception of what Marvin's case was all about. And I felt the Lord lift my anger off of me.'" So I pray today, if there's any of you today who are stuck in this cycle of anger, of justice that has happened, of injustice that has happened to you, I pray that God gives you a new perception of his mercy and his grace and his justice, and that in his mercy he will lift his anger off of you, and he will give you a vision, a new vision. Hope this blesses you today.